sting ops are hanging out right in front of my fucking apartment. These goddamn pedophile cops next door are hanging out in front of my apartment. Yeah. People from the apartment next door to me, they're at their red pickup truck out there. The female that's out there with them, she literally looked right up at my window. They're performing for video surveillance right now. They know damn well that every time they walk in front of my apartment, that I can tell that they're walking past my apartment. They're literally hanging out by the truck right now, the red pickup truck out there in the parking lot. They don't seem to be going anywhere. They just left the apartment, walked in front of my apartment, went down the stairs, and now they're just hanging out by the red pickup truck out there. And they were looking over at my window. I think the only thing this camera is picking up is the glare in between the shades, but I can actually see them out there because and they're still hanging out by the pickup truck. They don't seem to be going anywhere. They're not loading anything into the pickup truck or nothing. They just left the apartment, walked in front of from next door to me, and they walked in front of my apartment, and they went down the stairs, and they're hanging out in front of around their pickup truck out there. But they're not getting into the pickup truck. They're just hanging out near the back of it. Okay, one of them got in the truck and they just started to drive away. They're starting to drive away. They didn't all get into it. Only one of them got into the truck. The other two are still out there. It looks like they're aiming a camera at my window. Which technically, if they are, that would be obviously legal because they're outside. I don't really know if they are or not. I can't zoom in with this El Cheapo crappy camera, so I have no way to tell. But they are definitely people in law enforcement. They are definitely sting ops. The older male, he is a Portland cop. The other two people that are with him are civilian sting ops. They're not in law enforcement, but they're obviously sting ops for law enforcement here. A lot of people, a lot of relatives of law enforcement, a lot of people that are buddies to law enforcement or girlfriends to people in law enforcement are sting ops. And they aid and abet law enforcement in sting operations. And they aid and abet law enforcement in targeting people. Portland police and Multnomah County sheriffs are so fucking known to surround their targets with their civilian buddies and their civilian relatives and their civilian girlfriends in sting operations. They even use retired cops in sting operations. So even cops that are retired from law enforcement, they continue on in sting operations and aid and abet law enforcement in sting operations. They have surrounded my apartment. This is a form of, you have to understand, I'm not some sort of a bad guy that they're targeting. I'm a victim of their crimes and a witness against them. And the police department and the Multnomah County Sheriffs have covered up my 911 calls. They were framing me for crimes. I caught them literally in the act of framing me. They literally broke into my home, and they were planting evidence in my home with the intent of coming back with a warrant. And they were setting me up, and they were using my wife's lover, Officer Eric Carlson, as a fucking photo double. The cop literally dyed his hair my color, and he was acting as a photo double. And my wife and my wife's daughters were aiding and abetting them. And they were setting me up for crimes of which the sting operation was committing. And the sting operations were staging and committing all the crimes themselves, and they were using Portland cops as photo doubles to stage the crimes and or to commit the crimes. Some of the crimes they committed, they staged. Some of the crimes they committed were actual crimes. It was all done for the purpose of setting me up to get the blame, and I literally caught them in the act. So not only am I a victim of local police and county sheriff sting operations, where I'm being victimized by the sting, I was being framed and set up for the crimes that the sting ops themselves were guilty of. Now, I caught them in the act. That means technically I'm a witness against them. They poisoned me after I caught them. They poisoned me. And they covered it up at the hospital. The police and the county sheriff used their influence at the emergency hospital to deny me any form of help from a hospital. They literally poisoned me, and when I went to the hospital, because of the influence these officers have with doctors, the doctors refused to help me. The doctors refused to take an examination. The doctors refused to take a toxicology test, and then the doctors just pretended on their paperwork that they don't know what's wrong, even though I told them that they poisoned me. So, and I have been repeatedly poisoned by these sting ops. Ever since then, they have used their influence with apartment managers at the places where I've lived to gain illegal entry into my apartment. And Portland Police and Multnomah County Sheriffs, they were using a water filtration system they had under my sink, and they were using that to slowly poison me to death. And I didn't realize that at the time. They just walked right in front of my apartment. They were using that water filtration system to poison me to death. And when I found out about it, that's when I went to the store to get this El Cheapo cell phone, of which I'm recording this vlog with right now, so that I could get the water filtration system that they had under my sink on video. And when I came back home from buying this El Cheapo cell phone, I was going to get video of that water filtration system, and it was gone. So when I left the apartment to get this camera so that I could get that water filtration system on video, that's when the sting ops that were surrounding my apartment illegally entered my apartment, and they removed the water filtration system they had hidden under my sink. Now, the apartment manager lied to me about that device. She told me that device was a broken garbage disposal that was on their repair list. It was not a garbage disposal at all. It's not a device that was connected to the drain. It was a device connected to the water tap line, and that's it. It was a water filtration system. So the apartment manager was aiding and abetting these sting ops and poisoning me to death. When I discovered they had a device under there, and I went to go get a camera so I can get it on video, that's when the sting ops that are surrounding my apartment removed it. Now, these sting ops that are currently surrounding my apartment, these sting ops immediately took control of the surrounding apartments right after I found that water filtration system under my kitchen sink. And immediately after, shortly it was either shortly before that or shortly after that, I had caught the sting ops that were in the apartment directly below mine. They were deliberately setting me up, and they were using children in that sting operation. And I literally caught them in the act on video and audio setting me up. And because I had caught them in the act of doing this, they swapped out a lot of their sting ops that they had surrounding my apartment. They swapped out the people that were directly below me. They swapped out the people that were immediately next door to me right here, and they swapped out the people that were immediately next door to me right here. The sting operations didn't actually move out of the apartments. They just took out this crew of sting operatives that they had surrounding me, and they put in an all-new crew. Now, they only did this for that apartment to my right, and this apartment directly below mine, and to this apartment directly to my left. The rest of the sting ops that are surrounding me, they stayed. But the sting ops that were immediately surrounding my apartment, those are the ones they swapped out, and they just put in an all-new crew, essentially, of sting ops. And that's when this dude with the red pickup truck and the two other people with him that usually are with him, that's when he showed up. Now, when he first showed up, he was wearing a Portland Police uniform. I literally have him on video wearing a Portland Police uniform as he's leaving one of these apartments, and he was heading straight for that red pickup truck, and he got into that red pickup truck and they drove off. Ever since, that person, as well as two other people, have maintained a constant presence in his apartment to my right. And I already know he's a Portland cop because I already have him on video in his police uniform. And these people have repeatedly left that apartment. They'll walk out of that apartment next door, and they'll walk right in front of my apartment. They'll go in front of this apartment to my left, and then they go inside. They don't knock, they just go inside this apartment to my left. And they'll sit in there 5, 10, 15 minutes. And then they'll come out of that apartment, walk right in front of my apartment. They get in front of the apartment to my right, and then they just go inside. Throughout the entire process of them doing this, there is no knocking occurring. It's quite literally them flaunting the fact that they have me surrounded. Now, these people are sting ops. These people are guilty of murder. My wife and my wife's, well, pretty much everybody on my wife's side of the family were recruited into Multnomah County Sheriff and Portland Police sting operations in the year 2000, when my wife got a job at the Multnomah County Jail kitchen as a prep cook. And they immediately began targeting me and every member of my family in a sting operation, of which my wife and everybody on her side of the family was on board with, and my wife recruited our daughters into it. And back then they were using double to impersonate me, and they were using that double to target my parents. Just for the most part, on and off my entire life, I have been targeted by Multnomah County Sheriff and by Portland Police sting operations. When I was a child, my whole family was targeted by Portland Police and Multnomah County Sheriff sting operations, and it was the Multnomah County Sheriffs and their civilian ops, the Dunham family, that were targeting me and my family back in the 70s. Not because we're bad guys, but because the Dunham family and the Multnomah County Sheriff used me in an operation where they were framing a neighbor as a pedophile. And the Dunham family were neighbors of ours. They lived 2 houses away from where me and my family lived. And the Dunham family basically rounded me up. The mother of the Dunham family basically told my mother, "Oh, I'm taking our kids to the park, and I was wondering if I could take your son along with." And my mother thought that was innocent enough, and trusted the mother of the Dunham family. So my mother agreed. So the mother of the Dunham family, Darlene Dunham, took me for a walk, supposedly to go to the park. So technically I'm being babysitted by Darlene Dunham at that point. And Darlene Dunham lied to my mother. She did not take me to the park. Darlene Dunham took me to a house that was a block away. There was a Multnomah County Sheriff officer in uniform inside that house that was a block away. And that Multnomah County Sheriff officer was impersonating the person that lived at that house. And it was Darlene Dunham that ordered her children, as well as me, to go into the yard of that house. And the moment Darlene Dunham's children and me entered the yard of that house, that's when the county sheriff officer that's in the house started tossing candy bars at us. Darlene Dunham's children immediately began picking up the candy bars. They weren't confused as to what was going on. I, on the other hand, was very confused as to what the hell was going on, and immediately began asking questions. Now, I was only 6 years old at the time, completely clueless as to what a county sheriff officer even was. I didn't know what that dude was. I saw him in his uniform, but I didn't know what that uniform represented at all. I didn't even know if he was in law enforcement or not. I really didn't know. I seen him in the uniform he was wearing, but I didn't know what the uniform represented because I was only 6 years old at the time. And I turned around and asked her. I wasn't picking up those candy bars he was tossing at me, and I turned around at Darlene Dunham, and I said to her, "Am I supposed to pick these up?" And that's when I noticed Darlene Dunham was standing there across the street. And she had a big, giant, all-green, all-metal camera in her hands. And she was snapping photogenic photos of me and of her children picking up these candy bars. And that's when Darlene Dunham lowered the camera from her face, and I could see that she was grinning from ear to ear. And she told me, "Yeah, pick them up." So I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I started picking. Technically I'm being babysitted by the Dunham family at this time. And this is what they're telling me to do. Now, I didn't realize it at the time, but the Dunham family, the Multnomah County Sheriffs, were setting up the neighbor that actually lived in that house as a pedophile. And they used me in this operation. And they knew I was completely clueless as to what was going on. And they were trying to hide it from me as to what was going on. They used me in this operation. Well, me and my family became targeted by the Multnomah County Sheriff and by the Dunham family ever since, because I happened to make mention to my mother what they did, and my mother confronted them on it. And ever since that point, me and my entire family have been targeted by Portland Police, Multnomah County Sheriff sting operations, on and off. I didn't realize I didn't realize they framed that neighbor until mid-1975. When they framed that neighbor, it was 1971. And I was just too young to understand what I was witnessing. When I got older and wiser and realized what a fucking Multnomah County Sheriff officer was and what their uniforms look like, and when I realized what the Multnomah County Sheriff seal looks like, that's when I realized they framed that neighbor. And the reason why I made that realization was because the camera Darlene Dunham was using was a Multnomah County Sheriff officer's camera, and it had a Multnomah County Sheriff seal on it. Now, the county sheriff officer that was in that house, that was acting as a double of the person that lived there, he was in his county sheriff uniform. I'm only 6 years old at the time. I didn't know what the uniform represented, and I sure as hell didn't know what that seal that was on that camera Darlene Dunham used represented either. I didn't know what either of them represented. By the time I was 10 and a half years old, that's when I made the realization of what that uniform represented, and a few months later I found out what that seal represented. And that's when I realized that they framed that person that lived there. By then it was already too late in a sense that they had already destroyed my entire family in a sting operation. Because they heavily targeted me, they heavily targeted my entire family. And they literally destroyed my family. By 1973, the Dunham family and the county sheriffs and their civilian sting ops were gang stalking every member of my family and literally systematically destroyed my family. They arranged to have me and my brother beaten up at our schools. My brother was like 5 years older than I was, so he was in a completely different school than I was. But he was getting the same treatment at his school that I was getting at my school. He was being ganged up on and picked on and beaten up on at his school in 73 and 74. And I was being ganged up and picked on and beaten up on in 73 and 74. And me and my brother and my father were being poisoned by these sting operatives. These sting operatives were heavily targeting me and my family. They weren't hiding it from other people. They just justify it in the eyes of other people by labeling us as bad guys and then vilifying us behind our backs, so nobody will perceive us as victims. And we just didn't know that this was occurring. I didn't find out until a few years later that this was occurring. Ironically, if you're ganged up on by a sting operation and that sting operation vilifies you behind your back, you'd be surprised how many people will know about it and won't tell you. You'd be surprised. My whole neighborhood knew they were vilifying me and my family behind our back, and not a soul in the neighborhood would tell us this was even occurring. So while me and my brother were being ganged up on and beaten up on at our schools, and we were literally kicked out of school, we were being blamed for all the trouble that the sting ops were causing upon us. The sting ops would gang up on us, beat up me and my brother, and then the schools would just auto-blame me and my brother, and then me and my brother would get kicked out of school. And while this was occurring, the sting ops were also embedded themselves at my father's place of employment for the purpose of just sabotaging his career there. I knew nothing at the time about sting operations. My parents knew nothing about sting operations. All the signs of a sting operation were there, but because we were so ignorant of sting operations, it just didn't occur to us that we were a victim of a sting. We knew there were multiple people that turned against us, and we didn't know why, but we knew a lot of people seemed to be turned against us and were in an organized fashion were systematically destroying us, but we didn't understand the concept of it. We knew nothing about sting operations at all. Absolutely nothing. I mean, my own parents knew virtually nothing about law enforcement or covert crimes or sting operations. They knew nothing either, so they didn't recognize the signs of it. And of course, me and my brother, we were kids, we were completely oblivious to sting operations. It wasn't until after they literally systematically destroyed my entire family that I realized that, they used me in 1971 in an operation to frame some poor neighbor, and then they spent the next 3-4 years targeting me and my family in a sting operation. So I didn't really make the realization of this until I was like 10 and a half. Basically, when I found out what a county sheriff officer was, I found out what a Multnomah County Sheriff seal looks like. That's when I made the realization. And that's when I realized it. Now, I was only 10 and a half at the time. They've already destroyed my family. They destroyed my life. They destroyed my brother's life. They destroyed my father's life. When I made this realization, so it's like a little too late kind of a thing. The damage is already done, and there's nobody that cares. There's nobody that me or my family could turn to that cares. You'd be surprised how nobody in the government in the United States of America, nobody takes complaints on sting operations. Absolutely nobody. Charge a sting operation with a felony crime, and nobody will take the complaint, and nobody will act on it. And so, and I knew this back in the 70s, for the most part. Well, I found myself in the year 2000 once again targeted by a sting operation. And once again, it was the Multnomah County Sheriffs and the Dunham family that were targeting me and my family. Only this time, I'm in my 30s, and I'm married to my wife, Joan Wager, and we have 3 kids, and they recruited my wife and her side of the family into it. My wife, Joan Wager, got a job at the Multnomah County Jail Kitchen as a prep cook. Immediately after she got that job, she immediately began showing signs of having an affair. I was immediately under the impression that she was cheating on me with somebody in law enforcement. Who she was cheating on me with, I didn't know, and I wasn't trying to find out. I knew shit was going on behind my back. I knew my wife no longer loved me. I knew she was no longer confiding in me. And I knew everybody on my wife's side of the family were turned against me and were trying to hide it. They're no longer loving, caring family members. They were acting as though they're enemies and that they didn't want me to realize that yet. That's what they were acting like. And I was under the belief that, well, gee, my wife's cheating, she no longer loves me, divorce is imminent, gee, my guard's up because of this, and I'm no longer confiding in my wife nor any member of her family because as a result. After my wife worked at the county jail for just a month and a half, Multnomah County Sheriffs made the decision they were going to set me up as a pedo. They already had my wife and everybody on her side of the family on board with this, and they made the decision they're going to be setting me up as a pedo. And they're launching this operation on this day, and it happens to be the same day they told my wife, Joan Wager, to quit her job at the county jail kitchen to hide and conceal her connections with them. The same day my wife, Joan Wager, quit her job at the Multnomah County Jail Kitchen as a prep cook is the exact same day the Multnomah County Sheriffs filled out a multitude of 72-hour notices to take over the surrounding apartments surrounding mine and the apartments surrounding my father's, as well as the homes that surrounded my mother's home. The exact same day. So the day the county sheriff told my wife, Joan Wager, to quit, to hide her connections with them, is the exact same day the county sheriffs and their civilian sting ops are launching this operation to once again target me and my entire family. How do I know this? Because I know this because my wife, Joan Wager, and every member of my wife's side of the family on that day, at the end of that day, they were celebrating the county sheriff's decision to frame me as a pedophile. And they all showed, everybody on my wife's side of the family that day showed up on my property. And were openly celebrating this right in front of my face. They were all celebrating something. They didn't care if I knew that. And they weren't offering to tell me what they're celebrating. So I asked them outright. I said to my wife and everybody in her side of the family, because they're all obviously celebrating something, and they're not hiding that back from me at all. I asked them, gee, what are you guys all celebrating? And they answered my question with a whole bunch of grins and smirks and more celebrating, and they all began hinting at what they're celebrating. They didn't want to tell me what they're celebrating, but they were having fun hinting at it. Now, here's the intentional hints they were giving me on the day that my wife, Joan Wagar, quit her job at the Multnomah County Jail Kitchen. They're hinting to me that big shit's going on, and that this big shit's going to be fucking me over, and that's what they're celebrating and happy about. That's what they intentionally wanted me to know and get from their hints. So they were openly celebrating this conspiracy to target me and my entire family in a sting operation. And they were having fun hinting at it. Now, because they're all grinning, and they're all smirking, and they're all happier than pigs in slop, and we're openly celebrating and laughing in between all the hints they gave, and smirking in between all the hints they gave, they weren't keeping track of the hints that they were giving me. As a result, they ended up giving me a lot more hints than what they intended to. They unintentionally were hinting that they're going to be setting me up as a pedo. They were all hinting at it, but they were hinting at it in a way where they themselves were having fun taking pot shots at me with the hints that, because they all knew what was going on. My wife Joan and every member of her family, they all knew what was going on. And they were having fun hinting at it, but they didn't want me to pick up on the fact that they're going to be framing me as a pedo. But they were having fun hinting at it. Ironically, they weren't keeping track of those type of hints, and they ended up hinting way too much in that area. And I'll give examples of how they weren't keeping track. My wife would go into the apartment to get herself a cup of coffee and to use the restroom, while I'm out there in the yard with my wife's side of the family, and while my wife's inside the apartment going to the bathroom and getting herself a cup of coffee, my wife's sister was having fun hinting at the fact that they're going to be setting me up as a pedo. And my wife, Joan Wagar, is unaware of these hints that her family members are giving me in regards to this. And then when my wife would come out of the apartment with her cup of coffee, that's when my wife's sister, Vicky Rosales, would need to go into my apartment to use the restroom. And then my wife would give me hints about how they were going to be setting me up as a pedo. And my wife's sister, Vicky Rosales, was unaware of the hints that my wife was giving me in regards to this. So they were giving hints that they weren't keeping track of, and they were it's like my wife was unaware of some of the hints that her family members gave me, and my wife's family members were unaware of some of the hints that my wife gave me. So because of that, they unintentionally made it known to me that I'm going to be set up as a pedo. Now, I already knew my wife was cheating. I didn't know with who, but I suspected it was somebody in law enforcement, just because the timing of the affair coincided with her getting a job at the Multnomah County Jail Kitchen. And I already had prior knowledge that the Multnomah County sheriffs and the Dunham family use doubles and photogenic photos to frame people as pedos. Now, after 45 fucking minutes, minimum 45 minutes of my wife and every member of her family hinting at what's going on while they're celebrating what's going on, My wife's mother, Donna Miner, who was there and present during all this and was a part of the hinting process, she didn't notice I was standing out there anymore, and she assumed that I went into my apartment. It didn't occur to her that I just happened to be at that moment just standing right behind her, and she just didn't realize it. She thought I went inside my apartment. So she just flat out blurted, she just started talking to everybody in her family, and she started saying, she started talking about when the county sheriffs are going to be taking over the surrounding apartments. And that's when my wife's sister, Vicky Rosales, very quickly interrupted Donna Miner and was speaking over Donna Miner to get her to shut the fuck up. And Vicky Rosales actually reminded
man, how's it going? We got a bunch of free bread from Safeway, and we're just passing out around the neighborhood.
Nope.
All sell by yesterday, still good stuff. We just don't want it to go to waste. Okay. Have a good day.
Do you usually go to people's doors when you have kids with you? I find that kind of odd.
Yeah. I've never took them with me before, but I figured, hey, give me a hand. I couldn't get anyone else to help me, any adults. But my boys could help me. They're boys. You have a good day.
Are you in law enforcement?
No.
Because I have been surrounded by police sting operations, and they have been sending people to my door.
Oh no!
In these type of tactics.
I'm
sorry. they have sent people that don't even live in this apartment building.
Yeah.
To my door like at dusk, and they have children with them.
No way.
And I don't even know who these people are. They don't even live here.
That's crazy. That's crazy, and I believe it. To give you any kind of peace of mind, our church is like a block away. So we're like, where's the nearest community to bless? You know what I mean? We're like, dude, there's apartments right there. We got all this free bread we're getting for us, so let's pass it out. For peace of mind, I apologize to bug you.
Well, no.
My name's Joel, if that helps you out at all.
Well,
I'm just a dude with some kids trying to help out, man.
Okay. Listen,
what's your name?
My name's Terry.
Terry, nice to meet you.
The reason I'm pointing this out to you is because I've had people in law enforcement in plain clothing come to my door, and they have children with them.
That's crazy.
And
that's sad.
Well, there have been people that were over there when they do this. There have been people over there that were snapping photos. That were snapping photogenic photos when they did this.
That's crazy.
So this is the reason why I'm asking, because...
no, fair question. Fair question. Have a good day, Terry. This doesn't
Joel.
so we're going to keep going. My arms are tired.
All right.
All right, brother.
Okay, this is the reason, that's the only reason I'm pointing this out.
Understood.
Because,
so you're number 52. We plan on coming again next
Well,
weekend.
if you're from a church, I would appreciate it if you let people know.
Straight up from the get-go. Hey, we're from the
Listen,
church.
my wife was having an affair with a cop.
I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
No, thank you.
My wife was having an affair with a cop, and I was targeted in a sting operation.
Yeah.
And so that's the reason why I'm asking a question, because this is not
fair question.
This is not the first time that people that don't actually live here are sending
people around.
Well, they're sending kids to my door.
That's crazy.
And that's not appropriate at all.
That's terrible.
You have to understand that they're doing it at dusk.
I got to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I understand. That's fine.
Peace, Terry.
That's fine.
I'll talk to you later.
Okay, take care. He knows that Terry's right. He knows it's a sting operation. Okay. He is definitely a sting off. I don't know if the camera caught it or not, but the fact that he smirked. See, this is exactly why. This is exactly why. This is exactly what I've been talking about. Normally, I don't confront these sting ops when they pull this shit. He doesn't live here. He didn't knock on anybody else's door, I hope you noticed. He's not going door to door. They just knock at my door. They just knock at my door. That's it. And I hope you noticed, when I asked him if he was a cop, I hope you noticed he grinned. I hope you noticed that. This is what sting ops do. He is a sting op. Definitely a sting op. It's not normal for adults to go to people's doors when they have kids with them, and it's not normal. You know, his own story is bullshit, because if he's going door to door, well, then he would knock on other people's doors, and he's not doing that. I hope you notice he just knocked on my door, but he's not knocking on any other door in this apartment building at all. He is a sting op. He's either in law enforcement or he's a civilian op, one or the other. And he says, this is, you know, it's all they do. That it's basically called staging. They constantly send children to my fucking door. They do this repeatedly. Why would he have children right at my door, and why is the adult standing behind the children? Does that make sense to you? Why is this adult knocking at my door, and why does he have children in front of him? Because they're posing for video surveillance, and they're posing for photogenic photo purposes. I mean, they can Photoshop him out of their own video surveillance and out of their own photogenic photos. This is my cane, by the way. They can Photoshop him, and then it just looks like kids at my doors. And that's the reason why they do this shit. Now, I can easily and immediately peg him as a sting op. He is a sting op. His explanation is too good, but at the same, he's too good at lying is what he is. He's very confident and very easygoing in his lying. He is caught in lies because guess what? He's not knocking at anybody else's door, so obviously he's fucking lying. But notice how easily sting ops lie. I hope you noticed that. I've already pointed out on previous vlogs, I'm surrounded by Portland cops. I was explaining how I'm a target of a sting operation. And they have me under illegal video surveillance in my apartment, so they know when I'm recording a vlog. And now you know why when I record a vlog, I don't even bother. I don't even bother with a selfie. I don't even bother with it. And the reason why, I just aim at my doorway and at my front windows here because they usually get very active when I record a vlog. Very active. Now that was completely staged by these sting ops. Many sting ops are in church. It helps with their cover. Most people in law enforcement and most people that are relatives, people in law enforcement, are members of churches. And people that are sting ops generally are people that are in churches. So the fact that he says he's from a church, you know, chances are I believe that. The reason why is because most sting ops usually are. But he is a sting op because he's actually caught lying because he's not going door to door. He didn't knock on the apartment next to me to my right. He didn't knock on the apartment next door to me to my left. He went straight to my apartment and knocked. Straight to my apartment. And he had the children in front of him, literally right there at my door. Now that's staging. In sting operations, that's staging. If you're gonna go door to door to strangers' apartments, and you're gonna take your kid and you're taking your kids along with you, gee, you're not gonna put your kids up front. That's not normal. You have to understand they're performing for their own video surveillance and for their own photogenic photo purposes. It's all about making me look like a bad guy to other people. That's pretty much what it's all about. They fabricate their own evidence. They'll send some sting op with brats with them to my door. Quite more often than not, the sting ops will actually send the brats with no adult, and they'll send them to my door. And they usually do this at dusk. Now, he's trying to act like I'm in no condition to fight. I'm disabled. They poisoned me. They paralyzed me. I'm partially paralyzed from being poisoned by this sting operation. That's what just occurred is deliberate and intentional staging on a part of sting ops. I could tell he's a sting op. Whether he's in law enforcement or not is irrelevant. He's either a mid-level sting op or a high-level sting op. If he's not in law enforcement, then he's a mid-level sting op. He's not by any measure of the word a low-level sting op. I would compare him to the Dunham family. They're relatives. The Dunham family are relatives to people in Multnomah County Sheriffs. They're mid-level sting ops. They're lifetime sting ops. And that's what that dude is. I can pay a lifetime sting op immediately. That means he's not a low-level sting op. He's either a mid-level or he's a high-level sting op. One or the other. He's literally outright lying. He's saying that they're going door to door and offering, bread or something. That's just bullshit. That's just outright bullshit. And the reason that's outright bullshit is notice how there's an apartment to my left. They don't knock on that door. There's an apartment to my right. They don't knock on that door either. They go straight to my door and my door only. My door only. And then they don't knock on any other door. That's how you know. That's how you know they're just outright lying. So he is outright lying. That's their cover that he's using. That's the excuse he's using. That's his excuse for knocking on my door, even though he doesn't know me. I don't know them. But that's his excuse that he's using. But it's a lie on his part because they're not going door to door at all. They're just going to my door and my door only. He didn't knock on the door next door. He didn't knock on the left. He didn't knock on the door next door to the right. If he did, guess what? I'm recording the vlog. It would have caught that, and I would have heard that. He didn't knock on any of the apartments around here other than my door. My door and my door only. Now, this is the reason why he's a sting op, and this is the reason why they're specifically targeting me. And this is why they use children, because they're performing for their own police and county sheriff video surveillance and for their own photogenic photo purposes. They have no intention of... they were trying to frame me for crimes, of which... I found out about. I found out they were using a fucking double. Now the fact that these sting ops are using children in their stings. Now he's either mid-level sting op or a high-level sting op. He's most definitely not a low-level sting op. I can peg a low-level sting op very easily. The difference between a mid-level sting op and a low-level sting op is a low-level sting op is somebody that's usually already an adult and they just get recruited into sting operations by law enforcement and by their civilian ops. Those are low-level sting ops. People that are relatives to people in law enforcement or very long-time buddies to people in law enforcement or girlfriends to people in law enforcement, usually relatives and longtime buddies of people in law enforcement. Those are the type of people that are usually the mid-level sting ops. Those are the type of people that are sting ops all their lives. And it's mid-level sting ops that generally use children, usually their very own children, in sting operations. The type of people that are relatives to people in law enforcement, they're the type of people that go to church. They're the type of people that usually put their kids in the Boy Scouts and or the Girl Scouts. And those are generally the people that are the fascist sting ops in this country. They're the people that are connected to law enforcement. They have some form of connection with this government. And they, for all intents and purposes, they'll do anything and everything humanly possible to frame their targets and make their targets look like bad guys. You notice how he grinned? I hope I was able to catch that. He grinned. He was amused. He doesn't have a look of shock or surprise. If anything, when I'm confronting him in this manner, asking whether or not he's in law enforcement or not. And the reason why is because it's amusing. He was amused by my outright confronting him. It was amusing to him. That's a typical sign of a sting op, because they don't get shocked or surprised by really anything. If anything, they just get amused. I don't think they were outright expecting me to answer the door, for one thing. And I think he was quite shocked at my brazen confrontation with him. He should have been shocked by that. If he's, a normal person, my line of questioning would have shocked a normal person. Notice how it's not really shocking him. And the reason why he's a sting op. He's not shocked by it. He's just trying to cover himself and maintain his cover, and it's not working too well for him, because that's what he's more concerned with, is putting on the appearance of his cover. He's more concerned about that than he is about being shocked at my confronting of him. Because I already know he's a sting op. There's no reason he's outright lying as to the reason why he knocked at my door. That's just a bullshit, lamest excuse in the world. Oh, gee, sting ops put a bunch of kids in front of my door and they pretend, oh, they're here to help. We're offering free bread. That's just bullshit. That's just fucking bullshit. He's a fucking sting op. They want kids near me for their own video surveillance purposes, because they're trying to set me up for Officer Eric Carlson and his partner's crimes. Because Officer Eric Carlson was having an affair, of the Portland Police Department, was having an affair with my wife. And he was acting as a double to impersonate me, and he was trying to set me up as a pedo. Now, I've already established on previous videos that law enforcement is using children in sting operations. He's outright lying. This ain't the first time they've sent sting ops sent kids to my door, and they just knock at my door only. They don't knock at anybody else's door. It's just my door. Now, I can peg him immediately as a mid to high level sting op, because he is. He's either one or the other. He's not a low level sting op. I can easily compare him to the Dunham family, because he has the same characteristics as the Dunham family. He's trying to maintain his cover, and he's not doing a very good, believable job about it, because I already know and immediately pegged him as a sting op. I can peg a sting op immediately. I know whether they're a low-level sting op or a mid-level or high-level. I didn't have enough of the opportunity to know whether or not he's a mid-level or high-level. He could very well be a high-level sting op. That is possible. Normally, in a situation like this, they would send a civilian to my door. Normally. And the reason why is because they don't want me to catch undercover cops on video in plain clothing. and they try to hide it. They don't want that. They don't like that happening. And they know damn well that when I record a vlog, I usually upload it onto my YouTube channel. So that's the reason why they usually. That's usually why the Portland Police and Multnomah County Sheriff usually don't send undercover cops to my door. They'll just send their civilian buddies or their civilian relatives or their civilian girlfriends to my door, and they almost always have brats with them. This is so fucking ridiculous. He didn't knock on anybody else's door. He just knocked at my door. Nobody else's. And then they just leave. That's just bullshit. He's a sting op. Notice how he verbally pointed out my apartment number. Notice that. You know why? Because he's performing for his own video and audio surveillance. So that's the reason why he's asking my name, and then he verbally mentions my apartment number, which I have no problem with. That's fine. Apartment 52, apartment 52, don't care. The point is, the reason he's pointing that out is because he's performing for his own video surveillance. So he's specifically asking my name, and he specifically points out my apartment number. Does that sound like somebody that's going around offering free bread? Or does that sound like a sting off that's performing for his own video surveillance? Gee, was he shocked by my confrontation with him? Or was it amusing to him? It was amusing. To a sting off to be confronted, it's amusing to them. They don't get shocked by it. But because he's trying to maintain his cover, he's trying to just act like, he's just trying to act like a nice guy that goes around giving people bread, which is just outright bullshit because he went straight to my apartment and nobody else's. That's just bullshit. Bullshit. This sting ops in Portland, Oregon use children all the time. They do it all the time. It's how they make their targets look like bad guys. They'll do anything to get children near their target so that they can make their target look like a bad guy for video surveillance. Sting ops will literally bring children right to my door and then knock at my door. And they'll have the children right there at the damn door. Now that was completely staged by the sting ops that are targeting me. Now I was explaining before they knocked at my door, I'm surrounded by sting ops. I was explaining it, and I was explaining the origins of it, how it basically all got started. And then, oh gee, the sting ops literally, while I'm recording a vlog, they literally staged this stunt. Now, usually when they do this shit, it's usually at dusk. Usually. The sun is just going down, really. Usually when they do this shit. Now, when they've done this before, I have not confronted them in this manner. This is the first time I've confronted them in this manner. And this is just bullshit on their part because he's a sting-off. He's connected to law enforcement either as a relative to somebody in law enforcement or he's buddies with people in law enforcement. So he's outright lying. He's a sting-off. His cover story of going door to door offering people bread, that's just bullshit. That's just fucking bullshit. I've never seen this. I've lived here 4 or 5 fucking years in this apartment building. I've never seen that dude in my life. Ever. And if you look at him, he looks the type. He looks like he's in law enforcement. He looks like a thug. The very short hair, very typical and reminiscent of thug law enforcement. He has a haircut like law enforcement. Very short hair. And notice how instead of being shocked by my confrontation, instead of being shocked by it like a normal person would be, if he was a normal, innocent person that was genuinely doing what he claims to be doing, he would be shocked by my confrontation. Okay, this is part 2 of this video. I was recording a vlog because the sting ops that were surrounding my apartment were being active in front of my apartment. The sting ops that have my apartment literally surrounded were being active, so I immediately started recording a vlog because they were hanging out in front of my apartment. They were walking back and forth in front of my apartment, and so I started to record a vlog on it, and then I started and I identified who these people were as the people that are right next to my apartment to my right. And I already established on a previous video that the people to my right are undercover cops and are civilian operatives. I didn't have the chance to say my name or to give the date, so my name is Terry Wager, and the date today is August 16th. 2015. The time right now is like about 1:13 in the afternoon. Well, about a half hour ago, I was recording a vlog, and that part is going to be on this video. My cell phone that I'm using to record this vlog with, it can only record up to like about an hour, and then it just cuts off without warning. And so I wasn't able to finish the video that I was recording on this day, which the recording basically ended like about 10 minutes ago because my cell phone just cut off on me, and so I had to take the video that was on my cell phone and take it off of there so that I could finish recording that video and to give my explanation. Just a little while ago, I was recording a vlog, and a sting op came to my door, was knocking at my door. He had 2 children with him, and it was a completely staged performance put on by this sting op. This sting op had 2 children with him. The sting ops that are targeting me, they have been using children in their sting operation to target me. They were trying to set me up for crimes of which my wife and her side of the family, and of which the people in law enforcement that my wife and her side of the family was palling around with and sleeping around with, they're trying to set me up to get the blame for crimes that they're guilty of. My wife was having an affair with a Portland cop by the name of Officer Eric Carlson. This Officer Eric Carlson and his partners and his buddies in law enforcement and their civilian buddies and their civilian relatives, they were having fun using a sting operation to set me up for crimes. And Officer Eric Carlson was acting as a photo double in that sting operation for the purpose of framing me. In other words, he was staging and committing all the crimes for the most part, and his buddies and his girlfriends and his relatives and whatnot, using sting tactics, they were taking photogenic photos of him while he would dress up like me, and he would act like a pedophile, and he would stage various crimes for the purpose of framing me to get the blame. And my wife and everybody on my wife's side of the family was aiding and abetting them in this operation, and everybody at my wife's place of employment knew about this. My wife's co-workers knew that my wife was having an affair with a cop. They knew this cop dyed his hair blonde so that he could impersonate me, and they knew that my wife was hooking our daughters up with this cop, and they knew that I found out about it, and they knew that I tried to warn people about it, and the moment I tried to warn people about it, that is when my wife poisoned me. And the Portland Police and Multnomah County Sheriff used their influence at the hospital to deny me emergency services. And they subsequently covered up the poisoning by literally denial of emergency services due to law enforcement's influence with the doctors at the emergency hospital. My wife had me in a debilitated condition, and I was unable to get help at a hospital, and I'm in a debilitated condition and unable to call help or find help. And my wife and her side of the family and their fuck buddies in the Portland Police and in the Multnomah County Sheriffs, they just continued on with setting me up for shit while I'm in a debilitated condition. And my wife was not hiding her affair with this cop from her coworkers, and my wife's coworkers, they told other people about it, so it was open knowledge amongst a great deal many of people that I was being set up for crimes, and that my wife and my wife's side of the family were sleeping around with a bunch of people in law enforcement, and it was these people in law enforcement that were staging and committing all the crimes with the intent of setting me up to get the blame. And it was my wife that effectively silenced me and debilitated me by poisoning me when I tried to warn people about it. Now, I have been target of Multnomah County Sheriff and Portland Police sting operation ever fucking since. They've never stopped targeting me. They're very organized. They have a law enforcement and their relatives and their buddies and their girlfriends. They have a great deal amount of friends / accomplices of people that join in on sting operations for the purpose of ganging up on their targets and for framing their targets and even for murdering off their targets. This sting operation that was targeting me wasn't hiding the fact that they were palling around and sleeping around with my wife and with her side of the family. And they weren't hiding this fact from my wife and her side of the family's coworkers. So it was open knowledge amongst a great deal many people that I was being fucked over and set up. And for the most part, most everybody that knew about it was either on board with it or simply acted like they just didn't care. Because if some people did object to it, I'm sure they were probably in a situation where they felt like, there's too many people that are joined into this. To oppose any of this is to risk being targeted by it. So I'm sure there's a great deal. I'm sure there are some people at my wife's place of employment that probably didn't approve of what they're doing to me, but we're in a situation where they probably felt like it would be best if they just say nothing and stay out of it, kind of a thing. Because law enforcement wasn't actually hiding the fact that they're doing this, and neither was my wife and her side of the family. Now, I was explaining on this vlog that I started recording today, well, first off, I was trying to document the fact that the sting ops that have the apartment right next door to me to my right were hanging out in front of my apartment. And they do that for the purpose of harassment and terrorizing, and usually to trigger me into recording a vlog, because they know they have me under illegal video surveillance in my apartment. So if and they know if they provoke me enough or harass me enough, I'll start recording a vlog, trying to document it. And that's what I was trying to do, and that's what this the first half of this video is establishing. I'm trying to document the harassment that I'm getting from the sting ops that are surrounding my apartment. They can deny it all they like. I already have the motherfucker in the apartment to my right on video wearing a Portland Police jacket, so I really don't give a fuck if they deny it. Don't care. I already know he's a goddamn fucking pedophile cop. He's Officer Eric Carlson's buddy, partner, and accomplice. And Officer Eric Carlson is guilty of murder. So that makes that motherfucker that's in the apartment right next door to me to my right, that makes him an accomplice to Officer Eric Carlson's crimes. I have no qualm in saying that. I'm a fucking witness. and I was basically documenting the harassment. Well, by harassing me, they triggered me into recording a vlog. And I started explaining the origins of how I became targeted by a sting operation in the first place, and was trying to outline and explain how me and my entire family became targeted by a sting operation. And while I was doing that, the sting operatives that have me under illegal video surveillance are aware I'm recording a vlog, and they're like, okay, let's send a sting op with some brats to Terry's door. So they set a sting op. He's either a mid-level or a high-level sting op. In other words, he's either a relative to people in law enforcement who's a lifetime sting op, or he's a high-level sting op and in law enforcement directly, one or the other. He's one or the other. But they use this opportunity. They know they triggered me into recording a vlog by harassing me, and that usually does trigger me into recording a vlog, and in order to document the harassment. And that's when the sting op, an adult sting op, came to my door with two brats with him. And yes, Portland Police and Multnomah County Sheriff sting ops, yes indeed, use children in their sting operations. They do it all the time. Law enforcement and their civilian relatives and buddies, they use their own children in sting ops all the fucking time. It is a common practice in sting operations for them to use their own brats in sting operations. This is not the first time the Portland Police and Multnomah County Sheriff sent sting ops with brats to my door. Is it normal for them to do this? No. Is it normal for anybody to do that? No. If anybody claims to be going door to door for whatever fucking reason, it's not normal for people that do that to have brats with them. That's not normal at all. And the fact that this sting op is claiming he's going door to door offering bread to people and that he represents a church, that's just bullshit. I mean, he may or may not be a member of a church, but the fact that he's claiming to go door to door offering bread to people, that's just fucking bullshit. That's outright bullshit. He's a fucking sting op. He's either an undercover cop, which would make him a high-level sting op, or he's a relative to somebody in law enforcement, which means he's not in law enforcement, but he spent his whole life aiding and abetting law enforcement in sting operations. He's one or the other. He's by no means a low-level sting op. A low-level sting op is somebody that is a normal person, generally, that is not necessarily connected to law enforcement at all, but they end up becoming recruited into a sting operation by people in law enforcement and by the civilian operatives that are already in the sting operation. That's generally what a low-level sting op is. And he is by no means a low-level sting op. He's either a mid-level or he's a high-level. One or the other. In other words, he's either an undercover cop or he is a relative to somebody in law enforcement and has been involved in sting operations all his fucking life. One or the other. He's one or the other. The fact that he is performing for video surveillance of their own video surveillance was very evident and very obvious, because he's specifically asking my name, and then he specifically points out my apartment number, and he does this verbally out loud. Now, the reason he's doing this is because he's performing for video surveillance, because he's a sting op. Now, you have to understand, I've been targeted by stings on and off all my life, ever since I was 6 years old. I may have been targeted, my family may have been targeted by stings before that. If that's the case, I'm unaware of it, because I was just too young at the time to be able to remember anything before I was sick. I might have been targeted in a sting when I was 4 or 5. I don't know. If I was, I'm completely unaware of it and have no memory of it at all. But I do have memory of being targeted by a sting when I was 6 years old. And that's basically when it started, at least that I can recollect, based on my best recollection as to what took place back then. It started when I was 6 years old. I was targeted by a sting, by the Multnomah County Sheriffs and by the Dunham family specifically. There were other people that were involved, but the main sting ops that were targeting me and my family in the 70s were the Multnomah County Sheriffs and the Dunham family. The Dunham family happened to be neighbors of ours that lived 2 houses away. I was quite literally used by the Multnomah County Sheriffs and by the Dunham family in framing a neighbor as a pedophile. And they were using the Multnomah County Sheriff officer as a double. And it was the Dunham family that was bringing their children as well as neighbor children. They rounded up to that location where the county sheriff officer was that was acting as a double for the purpose of posing for photogenic photos with the double. And they used me in that operation. I happened to be one of the children that Darlene Dunham, the mother of the Dunham family, rounded up for this operation. Now, I was only 6 years old at the time. I knew nothing about sting operations or covert crime. My entire family knew nothing about sting operations or covert crime. And my family and I, myself, was completely oblivious to the fact that they were using me in this operation. And but I never forgot about it. I was only 6 at the time. My comprehension was very limited back then. I basically had a 6-year-old comprehension. My comprehension of what took place was extraordinarily limited because of my age. But I never forgot. I never forgot what they did. So as I got older and wiser, and I was able to, I was able to figure out what happened. Basically, I was a witness to the Dunham family and to the county sheriffs framing a neighbor as a pedophile. And they were using doubles and photogenic photos. And they were using the Dunham's children as well as the neighbor children they rounded up to pose with that double for the purpose of framing the neighbor. And the neighbor children they rounded up were just completely oblivious to this fact. And I happened to be one of the neighbor children they used in this operation. Now, I witnessed this take place and had no knowledge or comprehension as to what the hell is actually taking place or what's going on. Because of my age and because nobody was explaining to me what was going on, I didn't know what was going on. But I never forgot it. And the reason I never forgot it was because for me it was like one of the strangest days of my life, or at least one of the strangest days of my early childhood. It was such an unusual day for me that I never forgot it. One of those weird, odd, unusual days that just stand out among all the other days, and because of it, I just never forgot it. And when I got older, and wiser, and I realized that they used me in this operation, but by then it was already too late. They had already just effectively not only successfully framed that person as a pedophile, but they successfully destroyed me and my entire family after the fact in a sting operation. So by the time I had the wisdom to understand and comprehend what was going on, it was already too late. In other words, the damage was already done. Now, I have explained on many previous vlogs, I'm a victim of a sting. I have explained to many people on many different vlogs that my wife was having an affair with people in law enforcement, and that I became targeted once again by the Multnomah County Sheriffs and once again by the Dunham family after my wife, Joan Wager, got the job at the Multnomah County Jail Kitchen as a prep cook. They immediately began setting me up as a pedo, and they immediately brought in a double, and they immediately brought in the Dunham family, and they were targeting, once again, every member of my family, not just me. They literally had my wife and her side of the family targeting me, and at the same time, the sting ops had a double, a lookalike of me, that they were using to target my parents, and because this was personal on their part, they brought in the Dunham family, who have a long history of targeting me and my family in sting operations. They brought in the Dunham family in the year 2000 to target my children. And this all occurred right after my wife quit her job at the Multnomah County Jail Kitchen. And it was Multnomah County Sheriff that told my wife to quit after she worked there only a month and a half in order to hide her connections with them. And the same day my wife quit is the same day the county sheriffs filled out a shit ton of 72-hour notices to take over surrounding apartments, surrounding my apartment, my father's apartment, and my mother's home. They immediately brought in a double and were using the double to target my parents. And while they did that, they brought in the Dunham family to target my children. And they paid my wife and my wife's side of the family to turn my yard into a playground with multiple large swimming pools and with a large trampoline in preparation for the double's arrival onto my property. And this is how they were setting me up in 2000, and this is how they were targeting my entire family. They weren't really trying to hide this from other people. They basically take over. They come in by sheer numbers and pretend their target's a bad guy to other people, and they immediately vilify their target to other people, so that nobody will perceive their target as a victim. They surround their target. They bring in a double. They start staging crimes and committing crimes, and then they give their target the blame. And they've already destroyed their target's reputation before they even start staging the crimes, before the sting ops even start staging the crimes. It's literally the first thing they do. The first stages of a sting is the county sheriffs and the Portland police. They'll just take over the surrounding apartments. They immediately bring in a double. Through the target's relatives that they recruit into the sting, they take control of the actual target's property. In this case, they had my wife and her side of the family, and my wife's oldest daughter recruited into it. And the county sheriffs literally paid my wife to turn my yard into a playground in preparation for a double's arrival. And while that was occurring, the sting operation was using that exact same double to target my parents. And while they're doing all this, they were vilifying me behind my back. They vilified my father behind his back. They vilified my mother behind her back. And because of that, they don't really hide their sting operations from other people. They just vilify the target and label the target a bad guy, and the average normal, neighbors or tenants or whatever, they just perceive it as, well, gee, all these people are targeting this dude, and they're all saying this dude's a bad guy, so he must be a bad guy. And so that's how everybody perceives it. And this is how they get away with this shit. The neighbors that were surrounding me in 2000, they didn't know my wife was cheating on me with somebody in law enforcement. They didn't know that the same day the county sheriff told my wife to quit her job at the county jail is the exact same day the county sheriff filled out these 72-hour notices in order to take over the surrounding apartments. All my neighbors knew was, gee, multiple people, law enforcement, are taking over the apartments surrounding Terry Wager's apartment, and they're saying Terry Wager's a bad guy. And the neighbors just auto-believed the sting operation. And it's all being done behind my back, and behind my father's back, and behind my mother's back. And the sting operation wasn't really trying to hide their guilt from other people. They just try to recruit everybody into the sting by vilifying the target and labeling their target as a bad guy. And they do it out of sheer numbers, because that's essentially what a sting operation is. A sting operation is multiple people in law enforcement ganging up, usually on a specific target. And that's what they were doing to me. Literally, the beginning stages of a sting operation quite literally is literally law enforcement in sheer numbers taking over the surrounding apartments or surrounding homes that surround their targets for the purpose of controlling the area around the target. And they immediately bring in a double. Immediately. It's one of the first, it's like the beginning stages of a sting. It's like automatic. And anybody and everybody that is connected to law enforcement quite literally is a sting op. That means people that are relatives to law enforcement, people that are buddies to law enforcement, women that are sleeping around with people in law enforcement. They all become sting ops for law enforcement, and they aid and abet law enforcement in the targeting of people. Now, for all intents and purposes, sting operations are quite literally organized crime. It's organized people in law enforcement, and they're organized buddies, and they're organized relatives, and they're organized girlfriends. It's these people that do this shit to people, and they're extremely organized, and they're funded by the government to do this shit to people. In the very beginning stages of almost any and all sting operations is they take over the surrounding area to control the area and to fill that area with their operatives, and then they bring in a double. And then they just start staging and committing crimes with the full intent of blaming their target. And this is what they were doing to me. Now, I'm nobody special. I'm not a whistleblower. I'm not a political activist. I'm not a celebrity. I am not anybody of any real significance. The only reason I'm the exception to the rule in regards to being targeted by a sting operation is I uncovered their sting operation on the day of its launch. In other words, I pretty much found out almost everything the day that they launched this operation. And I made the decision basically on the day that the county sheriff, Multnomah County Sheriff, launched this operation to set me up as a pedo. It's the same day they told my wife, Joan Wager, to quit her job to count her kitchen. And it's the exact same day the Multnomah County Sheriff filled out a multitude of 72-hour notices to take over the surrounding apartments, surrounding my apartment, my father's apartment, and my mother's home. And they immediately brought in a double. And the reason I'm the exception to the rule is because I pretty much uncovered most all of this on the day my wife quit her job at the Multnomah County Kitchen. In other words, the day of its launch. And I had enough information not only to know what was going on and to know that, gee, I'm going to be set up by people in law enforcement, and everybody on my wife's side of the family, including my wife, is on board with it. I had not only enough information to know what was going on, but I knew exactly how to prove it. And because of this, I made the decision that I was going to hang in there to prove it. And I deemed the act of proving it as self-defense, because I literally uncovered the day that my wife quit that not only are they going to be setting me up as a pedo, and that my wife's buddies in the Multnomah County Sheriffs and her lovers and law enforcement are going to be taking over the surrounding apartments. I not only discovered that, but I discovered what they're going to be setting me up for. And I realized that day that the decision was already made by law enforcement, and that they're going to be setting me up as a pedo. So I was not under the belief I could get help by calling 911. I was under the belief that nobody in law enforcement is going to give a damn if I know. I was under the belief that, gee, I'm going to have to prove this as self-defense because they already made the decision to set me up. And I uncovered it the day of its launch. So I was hanging in there to prove it in self-defense, knowing exactly how to prove it. I had already been a victim of a sting operation back in the 70s. So when they targeted me again in the year 2000 in a sting operation, for me anyway, I deemed it part 2. And I took it that way. I literally, or round 2. I took it as round 2. Because I was targeted by the Multnomah County Sheriff's and by the Dunham family in a sting when I was only a small child in the 70s. So when I discovered it in the year 2000, oh gee, I'm being targeted once again by the Multnomah County Sheriffs, and this time they're going to be framing me as a pedo. I already witnessed the Multnomah County Sheriffs and the Dunhams in the 70s framing a neighbor as a pedo, and they were using doubles and photogenic photos, and they were using the Dunham's family's children and neighbor children in that operation to do that. And they used me in that operation, therefore I'm a witness to it. So I already know how they stage the crimes and how they'll literally bring in a double to impersonate their target, and then they just stage crimes and they just have their civilian ops back up the complaints on the target. I'm already a witness to these tactics, so I already knew in the 70s they did this shit to people. So when I found out in 2000 that, oh gee, I'm being targeted once again by the Multnomah County Sheriffs, and this time they're going to be framing me as a pedo, and find out that my wife and her whole side of the family were on board with it, I made the decision I'm going to hang in there to prove it, which means I acted like I didn't know what was going on. I kept their guards down. How can I acquire and accumulate and secure evidence if their guards go up? So I had to act like they're playing a covert cat and mouse game of staging committing crimes with a double for the purpose of framing me. And in order to prove they're framing me in self-defense, I had to play my own covert game of playing ignorant, acting like I don't know what's going on, when in fact I do know what the hell is going on. Now, in 2005, my wife and her side of the family and the Portland Police and Multnomah County Sheriffs, they were no longer really trying to hide this conspiracy of theirs. They were actually recruiting people that at my wife's place of employment in 2005. In the year 2005, my wife was working at Eastport Walmart, and my wife was openly cheating on me with Officer Eric Carlson of the Portland Police Department, possibly as well with other police officers. I've witnessed her in the company of multiple people in law enforcement, leaving that store on her lunch break with 2 different men. One of them is Officer Eric Carlson. Another one was another officer. I don't know his last name, but and I don't know if his first name is even is his true name or not. It's just a name that my wife told me his name was. So whatever, take that name for what it's worth, because my wife told me his name was Shannon. But that doesn't mean my wife was telling me the truth. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't believe that's his real name at all. I think my wife outright lied to me about his actual name. But I witnessed my wife going into a vehicle with Officer Eric Carlson and with another undercover cop. And they drove off together, and they were gone for like an hour, hour and a half lunch break. So I know my wife was having an affair with Officer Eric Carlson, but she was also sneaking around with Officer Eric Carlson's partners. So how many cops she was sleeping around with, I don't know. Have no idea. She has admitted to her affair with Officer Eric Carlson. She did admit to her affair with Officer Eric Carlson. But I've witnessed her not just in the company of Officer Eric Carlson. During her affair with him, I've witnessed her in the company of his partners. Well, I've also witnessed my wife's daughters in the company of Officer Eric Carlson and with his partners. And my wife's daughters were sleeping around with and palling around with Officer Eric Carlson and with Officer Eric Carlson's partners. As a matter of fact, my wife's, Joan Wager's daughter, Megan Wager, got pregnant by Officer Eric Carlson's partner, David. So, not only was my wife being womanized by a sting operation, but the sting operation was womanizing with our daughters as well in 2005 forward. And they weren't actually trying to hide this from anybody at Eastport Walmart nor from Clackamas Walmart. My wife was working at Eastport Walmart in 2005. And in mid-2006, my wife transferred from Eastport Walmart to Clackamas Walmart. And my wife, Joan Wager, and my wife's sister, Vicki Rosales, and my wife's daughter, Shauna Wager, and my wife's other daughter, Megan Wager, they all four of them got jobs at Clackamas Walmart. And it was open knowledge at Clackamas Walmart, as well as Eastport Walmart. It was open knowledge at Clackamas Walmart that my wife, Joan Wager, and her sister, Vicki Rosales, and my wife's daughters were palling around with and sleeping around with Portland cops! And it was open knowledge in both of those stores. Officer Eric Carlson, who is a natural brunette, was dyeing his hair blonde so that he could impersonate me, so that he could set me up in sting operations for crimes. And it was open knowledge in both stores that my wife, Joan Wager, and my wife's sister, Vicki Rosales, and my wife's daughters, all of them, were aiding and abetting these officers in setting me up for crimes. They weren't really trying to hide it from anybody in those stores. And throughout the entire course of this, the Dunham family was involved, mostly in an advisory capacity. They were not so much directly involved, but they were indirectly involved throughout the they were directly involved in the year 2000 because they were specifically targeting my children. The Dunham family was targeting my children in 2000. And the Dunham family actually used their children to pose on the trampoline that my wife and her side of the family put in my yard, that the county sheriff paid my wife to put there. And they did this right after I kicked this double off my property. That was in the year 2000. So the Dunhams were very much directly involved in this sting operation in 2000. In the year 2005, the Dunham family was indirectly involved and acting as in an advisory capacity to the other sting operatives. And they were trying to hide that from me. Any attempt, though, on their part to hide anything from me really was half-assed because they just don't really care if I know or suspect anything. For the most part, they thought I didn't know what was going on, so for the most part, their guards, for the most part, were down. The sting operations guards were down, and any attempt on their part to hide anything is half-assed because they just don't really care, and they think I don't know what's going on. I remind you, I uncovered this conspiracy of theirs, this sting operation of theirs, the day of its launch in the year 2000. So, and they didn't think I knew. So, they thought I'm more oblivious to what's going on than what I actually knew. I knew quite a lot more than what they thought I knew. For the most part, it was a very large cat and mouse game. They're playing using covert tactics to set me up for crimes. And throughout the entire course of it, I was using covert tactics to act like I don't know what's going on, to keep their guards down, while I document their communications with one another. Because I knew every time my wife went shopping together with her sister Vicky Rosales. I knew each and every time they were meeting with county sheriffs, and they were being further instructed as to what to do next. And I was taking the time to document their communications. In self-defense, literally in self-defense. And they didn't think I knew what was going on, when in fact I did know what was going on. So they made errors in their sting operation. And I made errors myself because I misjudged. I had the whole thing pretty well pegged, but right off the bat, right on the day of its launch, but I misjudged the sheer size and magnitude of it. It was much larger of an operation than what I initially thought it was. My initial impression was it's just 2 to 3 bad apples in law enforcement, and that it's everybody on my wife's side of the family on board with it. And I assumed that one of the people in law enforcement was the person my wife was cheating on me with, and I assumed that the other officers were just that person's buddies / partners. That was my initial impression of it. It turned out to be something that was way larger than what I initially thought it was. And that I was under the impression I'm the only target of it. So I was rather gung-ho about hanging there to prove it, thinking, well, it's just my ass on the line. Oh, quiver. Not. I was very gung-ho about hanging there to prove it, and I knew exactly how to prove it. And all I had to do was keep their guards down. Pretty much that's really all I had to do, just basically hang in there, act like I don't know, keep their guard down, and just document their communications, keep track of the process they were using. In preparation for court, because I thought, I was under the belief I was going to be framed for crimes, and that this issue was going to be going before court. So essentially, while they're setting me up using sting operation tactics to literally be arrested, the whole time I'm hanging in there documenting their communications with one another, keeping track of the process they're using in self-defense and in preparation for court. But I misjudged the sheer size of it, so that was my error. That's pretty much the only error that I made. But it was a much larger operation than what I initially thought it was. Well, today, currently, the year right now is 2015, and I am currently surrounded by sting ops. The Portland Police Department and Multnomah County Sheriffs and their civilian buddies and their civilian operatives, they've, for the most part, taken over practically this entire building. Now, that sounds extreme, considering there's 16 apartments in this one building? Normally, that is extreme. Normally, sting operations are not usually that large, unless it's near the end of a sting operation. The sting operations usually get very large near the end. Once again, I'm the exception to the rule. The reason I'm the exception to the rule is because, I'm not a celebrity. I'm not a whistleblower. I'm not a political activist. I'm nobody really special. I'm just your average guy that worked all my life, worked hard, always had very hard, difficult jobs. My life was never easy. I was trying to raise a family and trying to be a good father to my kids and trying to be a good husband to my wife, but I find myself, in a sting operation-ridden city, and my wife ended up being recruited into sting operations, and as a result, me and my entire family once again became targeted by a sting operation. And it was personal. The fact that they recruited my wife and her side of the family into it is enough to know it's personal. And the fact that they brought in a Dunham family who targeted me and my family back in the 70s into this sting operation in 2000, that's also enough to know it's personal. I'm the exception to the rule generally because not because I'm somebody special or anything like that. The only reason I'm the exception to the rule is because I happened to uncover this conspiracy into the year 2000 at the day of its launch and was hanging there to prove it. They know I was hanging there to prove it. They know now. They most definitely know now. They didn't know then, but they know now. They're not happy about the fact that I was hanging there to prove it. They know damn well I've secured evidence, and they know damn well there's not a threatening universe that they can make that would cause me to surrender any of that evidence over to them. Fuck them. I have never fucking... I'd rather secure evidence of their guilt for future posterity for fucking ever, even if it costs me my life. So there's not a threat they can make that's going to intimidate me. So they're this is a much larger operation than normally how a sting operation goes. But only because I'm the exception to the rule. Normally they'll bring in a great deal of sting ops, usually at the end of a sting operation. Usually that's when they're getting ready to arrest their target or when they're getting ready to murder their target. They have no intention to give me a trial. They know damn well I don't fear court. I've secured more than enough admissible evidence of their guilt. They don't really have a case. They never really did. I already knew they never had a case against me. And it doesn't really matter how many people they bring into a trial and have, falsely testify against me. It doesn't really matter because I've already proved that the county sheriff were funding and running and directing all of this, and that they had recruited my wife and her whole side of the family into it, and that they had the Dunhams involved in it. So, and that they have a history of this shit. So they don't really have a case at all. They're more concerned about. They're not concerned about court. What they're concerned about is covering their asses. And so they'll do anything and everything in order to make me look like a bad guy, which is why they had that mid to high level sting off with a bunch of brats with them knocking at my door today. They do that for their own video surveillance purposes. It's all staged on their part because he's performing for video surveillance. And it's very obvious and very evident that that's what he was doing. He doesn't really care if I know either. I hope you noticed. I hope I was able to catch it on video that he was grinning and smirking when I confronted him, because that's what sting ops do. Sting ops are overly confident. They're overly cocky, and they don't act normal. A normal person that gets confronted like that would be quite shocked by it. He wasn't shocked by it. He was amused by it. And that's a dead giveaway of a sting op right there. And the fact that he's pointing out, he specifically wants me to state his name, and he specifically wanted to verbally point out my address. That's enough to know he's performing for video surveillance. That's more than enough. So keep in mind, he's a trespasser. I live here. I have a right to be here. And this sting op is using children in his sting, and he's deliberately knocking at my door and then putting on a bullshit performance for video surveillance. And it's just obvious that's what they're doing, and he's obviously doing it because he's posing for his own video surveillance purposes. This is a situation where I'm either going to be more than likely murdered. They've already poisoned me. They partially paralyzed me because they poisoned me. They covered it up at the hospital. I've already proved that. The problem is I have more than enough proof of their guilt. What I don't have is people that care. What I don't have is people that will take a complaint. There is nobody in this town that takes complaints on police or their civilian operatives or on their sting operations. And because of it, I have no way to get help. I'm disabled from being poisoned. I'm partially paralyzed from it. I bleed internally. I have severe pain. It's not easy for me to get around. I'm, for the most part, immobile, and for the most part, just sit in my chair. I'm just literally sitting in, here's my armrest right here. I'm just sitting in a chair right here. And for the most part, I'm immobile. I either sit or I lay down. I don't really go anywhere. I'm too disabled. I'm too disabled to really go anywhere, and they have repeatedly broken into my home. And if I do leave my home, they break into my home, and they poison my foods. They tamper with my food. So I have to quite literally do all my grocery shopping at the beginning of the month and buy enough food to last a month. And I have that shopping cart right there to buy a month's worth of food. And that food has to last me a month. Because once I make the shopping trip and I come home and I bring my food home with me, I can't leave my apartment and leave my food behind because they'll fucking poison it. So I have to literally guard my food. And I'm just too disabled. I can't lug my food all over the goddamn place. I can't leave this apartment and take my food with me because it's just too damn heavy and I'm just too disabled. So I'm quite literally, I have one day to basically pay my bills, do my grocery shopping, and then I'm basically trapped in my apartment for a month. And I'm literally trapped in my apartment. I could physically leave. I'm too disabled to go very far, but I could physically leave this apartment. But I can't leave it because if I do, the sting ops that are surrounding my apartment break in and they tamper with my foods. So they obviously, Portland Police and Multnomah County Sheriff don't want me as a witness. They want me dead. They've already made that known. And it's a matter, they're in a constant state of either staging street theater performances to harass me, trying to provoke me into fighting back so that they can just pull out their guns and shoot me and then fake justification, or they're in a state where they're staging street theater performances for the purpose of making me look like a bad guy. In this example that happened today, they did both. They're hanging out in front of my apartment, harassing and provoking until I start recording the vlog. And once I start recording the vlog, then they send a sting off with a bunch of brats with them to my door to make me look bad for their own video surveillance. And that's pretty much what they did. So they basically did both today. Now for me, it's an everyday thing. This is not the first time that they deliberately hang out and walk back and forth in front of my apartment, and they're not carrying anything. They just deliberately walk back and forth. Or they'll just stop right in front of my doorway, and then they just stop, and they just stand there. And they do that as a form of harassment and terrorizing. And then it usually triggers me into recording a vlog to document it. And they quite often will stage more street theater performances after I start recording a vlog. And that's what they did. The date today is August 16th. August 16th, 2015. It's a Sunday. And the fact that sting-off came to my door, knocking at my door in the afternoon, early afternoon, around 12-something. The fact that he did that and he had a couple of brats with him, that is not normal at all. It's not normal for solicitors to go door to door and for them to have brats with them. That's not normal. That's what sting operatives do. And they do this to people that they're framing as pedophiles. How do I know? Because I'm already a witness to the Multnomah County Sheriff's and the Dunham family sting operations and witness to the tactics they use. I'm already a witness. They've already used me in that type of operation when I was a kid in 1971, and I witnessed it. So I already know how they do their staging. And that was definitely staging. Basically, he's a sting-off. He's either a cop, undercover cop, or he's just a relative of somebody in law enforcement. Either way, he's connected to law enforcement, and he acts and functions as a sting-off for law enforcement. either way. And law enforcement regularly uses their relatives and their relatives' children in sting operations. They do it all the time. It is a common practice with Multnomah County sheriffs and Portland police. And news media just looks the other way every time they do it. And that's how they get away with it. And that's why most normal people are completely unaware of sting operations and unaware of the tactics. For me, it's plainly obvious and blatantly obvious. What's shocking to normal people is usually the sheer size of a sting operation, because it's usually, no matter how large you think a sting operation is, it's usually much larger than what it actually is. They just try to hide it from their targets because they don't want their targets, and they don't want average normal people knowing how large sting operations actually are. Now, I'm the exception to the rule. They've taken over pretty much this entire building. They've taken over there's 3 main buildings here. They've taken over predominantly this entire building. And they've taken over at least half the apartments and the building on the other side of the courtyard. And they've probably taken over about half of the apartments in the courtyard, in the building that's in the back of the courtyard back there. Now, that's a very large sting operation, very large. They usually don't bring in this many people unless they're planning a killing. And that's the reason why they bring in so many, because every one of them will pretend to be civilians that are not connected to law enforcement and will act as false witnesses on behalf of law enforcement. And that's the reason why sting ops do this shit. And that's usually how they get away with it. And news media just ignores the fact that they're doing this and doesn't point it out to people. And most normal people are completely unaware, totally unaware that law enforcement does this to people. Now, because I uncovered this at its launch, I was never really fooled by their pretenses. I just misjudged the sheer size of it all. I had it well pegged and just misjudged the size of it. This sting op that came to my door, he's quite literally using children in a sting operation. That was a complete performance and pretense that he's putting on for Portland Police, Multnomah County Sheriff's video surveillance, and he's just performing. And that's a perfect example of how sting operatives use children in their sting ops. Is that enough to deem law enforcement as pedophiles? Is that enough to deem them as corrupting minors? Should that sting op be charged with corrupting minors? Because technically that's what they're doing. They teach their sting ops teach their own children how to target people with stings, and they actually use their own children in sting operations. Technically, such criminal organized crime is illegal, and yet law enforcement regularly uses their relatives, brats, in sting operations. It is a common practice, and they do it for the purpose of staging, so that they can make their target look like a bad guy. And I basically I pegged it immediately, knew immediately that's what they're doing, and because they've done it before. And is it normal for solicitors to claim they're going door to door and to have children with them? Is that normal? Hell no, that's not normal. Only sting ops do that. Only sting ops. I don't care who they say they represent. It doesn't matter who they say they represent. They're sting ops. Normal people do not take their own children with them when they go door to door. At all. That is not normal. That is what a sting operation tactic. Outright a sting operation tactic. That dude is not even a low-level sting op. He's a mid-level to high-level. That means he's either in law enforcement, which would make him a high-level sting op, or he's a relative or a lifetime buddy to people in law enforcement, which would make him a mid-level sting op. And that's exactly what he is. And guess what? They use their own children in sting operations. And now you know how police and county sheriffs all across the United States of America, how they frame people as pedophiles and how they make innocent people look bad for law enforcement's video surveillance. They do a hell of a lot of staging, a hell of a lot of performing, and they even use their own brats to pose. I have nobody I can call for help. Nobody cares. I see why it's so easy